Hello, this is a demo video to demonstrate how the ship date calculator works in Salesforce. Essentially, every time that an order is scheduled for shipment, the ship date needs to be calculated according to certain factors, like, for example, certain fields inside the quote, like the product family, the inventory status, and the total value of that quote, of the parent quote for that order, and also other constraints like the lead time, the daily capacity, the weekly capacity, and the shipment limits. These constraints are explained here below, starting with lead times, which are basically the amount of time that is required to prepare each of the orders based on the product family that is selected from the parent quote. So, for example, if the parent quote has a product family like real wall or light barrier, 2 weeks will be needed for that order to be prepared before the shipment. If the product family for that code is stock barrier, it will take 4 weeks to be prepared, and if it is fire block wall, then it will take 8 weeks. The capacity limits are based on the total value for that quote. In this moment, for the purposes of this test, we have configured these values. Daily max capacity means that daily we can send this amount of money in orders. The weekly max capacity means that we can send this amount weekly, and the daily shipments means that we can only send this amount of shipments per day. And also we have other constraints which are similar to the previous ones, which are based on the capacity by product family and inventory status. This is a combination of the two fields from the quote, which are the product family here and the inventory status. And essentially, these combinations give certain constraints of money or of value from the quote that can be shipped weekly. So that's essentially the constraints that we have configured here. Also, this calculator takes into account only days from Monday to Friday. It doesn't take into account any days at weekends, and also it ignores the days which are holidays. So all of these constraints that I've mentioned here can be easily configured from Salesforce inside this object, which is here. This is the order ship date constraints object, and basically it stores all of this configuration as we just saw previously. So they can be easily changed. For example, this is the overall weekly max capacity, and this is the value. We can easily change it for any other value that we need. And the same for all the other combinations of product family and inventory status that we can see here in this table. This is the daily max capacity for the amount of the amount or the value that we can ship daily, and this is the amount of shipments that we can also send daily. And this other configuration here essentially shows how many ship dates will be shown to the user for selecting a suitable ship date. So we can cover this value later. So for the purpose of this test, I've prepared these 3 quotes and orders that we can use for testing what will be the next ship date available for a new order that we want to ship. So all of these quotes, the RW inventory 1 quote, the RW inventory 2, and RW inventory 3, all of them have a total value of $500,000, and all of them have the same product family, real wall, and the same inventory status as supermarket. So the three orders share the same values essentially. And we can see here that this order has a ship date already scheduled for May 5th. This one has a ship date scheduled for May 13th, and this other one has a ship date scheduled for May 19th. And we can see all of this in this calendar. So for the purpose of this test, we will consider April 23rd, 2026 as the current date, and the blue circles represent the orders that are already scheduled and have a ship date already stored in them. And the exercise is essentially calculating the next ship date available for a new order that we want to ship. So that order will be this one, and it doesn't have a ship date in this moment. So for executing this feature, we essentially click here, this button, select ship date, then this window will appear. We can review the essential values from the quote, the product family, the inventory status, and the current total value of the quote, which is also 500,000 as the other previous orders. And when we click next, it will calculate 6 available ship dates that can be selected, and this would be the most recent ship date that is available to be selected, which is May 26th. And we will explain now why this date appears as first. So the feature essentially starts applying all of the constraints week by week. So it will start by going to this date, April 23rd, and then it will apply the first set of constraints, which are here. It will apply the lead times by product family. So it says that if the product family is real world, it will apply 2 weeks from the current date. So if we see here, 2 weeks after April 23rd would be April 30, and then May 7th. So this would be 2 weeks apart from the current date. And then it will start by going to the first day of that week, which is in this case May 4th. And from this day, it will start looking for available ship dates to assign to this order. So it will start from this day, and then it will apply the order, the constraints. Then it will start checking, for example, the weekly max capacity. We see that weekly max capacity is set in this moment as $1,300,000. So if we check here the calendar, we see that there is one order for this week, which is scheduled, and this order has a total value of 500,000. So if we add the order 500,000 for the current date, for the current order that we are trying to schedule, it will be $1 million, and it will be inside the limits of the constraint. So we can see that essentially for this first test, it works. Then it will check the daily max capacity, which is set in this moment as 560,000, and this is higher than the current value for the order, which is 500,000. So it is fine as well to select, for example, May 4th as the date. Then it will check the order constraint, which is the daily shipments, which are 15 per day. So for May 4th, we don't have any orders scheduled to be shipped on that specific date. So the limit is also respected for this date, May 4th. But then it will check then the order limits, which are these ones that we can see here. The weekly capacity limits by product family. So it will check that for a quote of type real world and an inventory status of supermarket, the limit weekly is $550,000 per week. So essentially, since we already have an order scheduled to be shipped during this week, and if we add our order to this same week, we would be surpassing that limit. So this week can't be considered for that ship date. So the system will automatically start checking for the next week, and it will find the same thing. It will find an order that is scheduled to be shipped on May 13th, and it has also $500,000 as total value. So it will surpass again the limit. Then it will go to the next week, which is this one, from May 18th to May 22nd. And then it will check the same thing. There is another order with a total value of $500,000. So what it will do is go to the next week, and in the next week it finds this day, which is considered a holiday in the US. So it won't take into consideration Monday 25th, only Tuesday 26th as the most recent ship date that is available to be selected. And that's the explanation about how this feature works and why we can see here that value for that specific order when we try to select a ship date. And yeah, that's essentially how the feature works. And we can configure again all of the constraints that we can see here. The only aspect to take into consideration is that the boundaries or the limits that we configure here needs to be higher than the order that we're trying to ship, because if any of these limits is lower than for example, the total value for that order, we won't ever find a suitable ship date because none of the dates will comply with the limits that we have configured here. So that's one point to consider, but all of this can be easily changed, and immediately the value that we configure here will be taken into account when we click on the button, on the select ship date button. That's essentially the explanation about this feature. Hope this is helpful. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.